When we talk about Mike Barron and Pat Broderick, or when I talk about Mike Barron and Pat Broderick, I'm going all the way back to Tuttle, the high school years. Um, when people talk about Mike Barron, they always want to talk about the Punisher or Badger. But my exposure to Mike Barron when I was in high school was he took over the Flash immediately after Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I'm just coming off the high of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and there are a bunch of new titles. One of them is there's a new Flash featuring Wally West instead of Barry Allen, and as a high schooler, it was just what the doctor ordered. I don't have any studies to back this up, but I think if you're a fantasy or a sci-fi or a comic book reader over the course of your life, I think it's very likely that when you're like a teenager or a young man, you start looking for realism, and then when you get to be in your 50s, you're fine with abandoning realism and going for fantasy and magic and all that stuff. But as a young man, I kind of had this impulse towards realism, and I really liked what Mike Barron did with the book, because Wally's powers had been affected by his experiences during the crisis and what happened to Barry and all that. So Wally could no longer run above the speed of sound, which grounded the series a good bit for me. Because I always thought, even as a little kid, I mean, how can you fight the Flash? Talk about, Superman being overpowered. How can you fight the Flash? He essentially lives in a world where the rest of us are statues. So, how are you going to fight that guy? But, making him, he's still fast, but he can't run faster than the speed of sound, kind of grounded him a little bit more. And also, Barron introduced the idea that, Wally was expending so much in terms of calories that he essentially, had to eat continuously. Now, Broderick, I discovered a couple years earlier. I'm going to say like 83. And I discovered him in two places that young 8th grade Tuttle really found himself in terms of his comics. One was young Tuttle loved Firestorm. I thought he was the neatest character in the world when I was 13. And the second is I'm just a big Legion of Superheroes fan, going all the way back to when I was 10 years old. And so Broderick was the main artist on Firestorm, and Broderick did a number of fill-in issues on the Legion. So again, these two guys go back to the very origins of my comic book reading. So I took that trip down memory lane because I had the opportunity over the last couple weeks to read the newest collaboration between Barron and Broderick, Bronze Star. I read it when I first got it in the mail, and then earlier today I read the artist edition, which is it's the same book, hardbound with bigger proportions, so you can really appreciate the Broderick art, and it's the whole book's in line art. And the first time I read it, I just let the story wash over me. It's a gripping little tale. It's the kind of weird Western tale comics we used to read when we were kids. But this time when I was reading it, I had the chance to reflect on we are seeing two master craftsmen at the height of their game. You know, the old expression, you know, he's forgotten more about plumbing than you'll ever know, or he's forgotten more about engine repair than you'll ever know. Like, Barron and Broderick are such master craftsmen. In many ways, they've forgotten what a lot of, new creators will never know. They just, the line work for Broderick, and I get this is what sponsored or what sparked today's video is there was not just the book but also some portraits and some some sketches of the main character. The line work is just breathtaking. I mean, Pat Broderick has not missed a beat. I've got a sketch of Broderick somewhere. I have it might be at my office. I had a sketch of he did a sketch of Hope Summers versus Jean Grey for me. And the same thing, I would say the same thing about Mike Barron. I mean, this is a story that could be written by a guy conducting a class in how to write a comic. It hits all the beats exactly when it needs to hit them. You feel as though you are in the hands of a master storyteller, and he's going to tell you a story by the campfire. You know, when a cold prairie night, just to torture the analogy further. So yeah, I mean, Bronze Star was an incredible amount of fun, which in many ways reminded me of what it was like to buy comics just for a fun story. A ripping good yarn, as our friends the Brits would say. So there was a hefty bit of nostalgia for me with Bronze Star, and not just because these are two guys that go all the way back to my teen years. So, absolutely fantastic to see them collaborating. You want a fun story? You want a ripping yarn, so to speak? Pick up Bronze Star. This has been Tom Tuttle.